Hi, Greg. How are you?
I'm well, boss. How are you?
It's good. I haven't talked to you in a long time, man. So it is really nice to get the chance to reconnect. So I appreciate it very much. I want to say that from the top of the show. Um,
Oh,
let
thanks, man.
let's talk about the fight. I wanted to get you on because Jon Jones, your understudy, is here competing against Anthony Smith. A couple things I wanted to talk about from your vantage point. After the fight with Gustafsson, the rematch, I saw a lot of people being like, yeah, you know what? Jon looked slow, but he got the job done. And I'm thinking to myself, that has to be the most insane take on that fight ever. Again, it's not like I didn't think he was being maybe a little bit cautious, but the bigger picture to me, Greg, was how smart it was, how strategic it was, how many lessons learned from the first fight. When you saw some of the post-fight chatter that Jon looked a little slow in the Gustafsson rematch, what did you make of it?
Well, I guess I never really pay attention to the post-fight chatter because I'm not very internet savvy, as we all know. Anybody that knows me, so I actually don't get on and see what everybody else said about it. Slow, I would not say would be one of the defining qualities of that fight, but everybody's got their opinion or the way they view things through their lens. I wouldn't say slow. I'd say very methodical, very calculated, and very effective would be the way I would say, but wouldn't say slow at all. As a matter of fact, I think he got hit way less that fight. And if he was slow, he probably would have got hit a lot more. So I'm not so sure that assessment would hold up under any kind of scrutiny. Certainly, empirically, if you were very slow, Gustafsson has very good hands, you would be eaten alive. So I wouldn't say the slow would be the defining quality that I would have brought out of that.
No, me neither. I didn't agree with it at all. I thought that there was so much high-level gamesmanship going on that, again, maybe if he was being physically cautious, that it was probably a good reason. So from your vantage point, the Gustafsson rematch, I mean, could it have gone any better? I suppose it could have gone 30 seconds, but from everything he did do, it went pretty goddamn well, didn't it?
Yeah, I thought it went extremely well. He followed the game plan exactly, did everything that we needed to do, and got a great finish that he was not able to get in the first fight. The first fight was such a competitive fight. I felt we won it, but it was certainly competitive. I felt that we pretty well dominated the second fight. So if anything, I see a lot of improvement in Jon. But I think people, want to. I mean, every time somebody performs well. I think that there's a natural inclination to try to find something wrong with it. And if you have the tools in front of you, you say, well, I think he looked a little slower. I think it's very human. So I think that while, in my opinion, we did a much better job the second time than we did the first, I think that people will naturally want to try to find something wrong with it. And that's fine. I mean, that's part of MMA, right? It's the entertainment and the argument and the debate. And well, I think he's slow. No, he's not slow. I mean, all of that stuff is why people love to watch it.
All right, so let's talk about his growth. The two big indications of it are he fights Cormier, it goes 5 rounds. He rematches, it goes half the distance. He fights Gustafsson, it goes 5 rounds. He rematches, it goes half the distance. So that tells me there's a lot of growth. But here's the question I'm asking. How much more is possible?
That's a good question. I actually think quite a bit more. Working with him as often as I do and getting to know him, not just as a person, but technically as well, he actually has a lot more to go, which is scary, I think, in a lot of ways. I think that he reminds me of a Sugar Ray Robinson, and anytime that Sugar Ray Robinson got a rematch with somebody, it was short where he just has this internal fight IQ computer that starts to really download stuff, and he learns and he studies and he gets better each and every time. So I really feel that if you give Jon a rematch, you're in a lot of trouble, and even if he wins it. So there's a little bit of that, and then there's a little bit of it's his personal growth. He's getting better in all areas. He's always expanding, always pushing new ideas and new things. And as long as you do that, you're always going to stay current. You might get caught here and there. Everybody does. But I think overall, you're always going to stay kind of on that cutting edge if you have that attitude of always trying to add things to your game, and he certainly does.
How has he changed as a student from the time he joined the team to now?
That's one of the remarkable things about him, and actually he had in common with Georges St-Pierre, is he's still very studious. Like, he's never come in acting like he knows everything or he's got it all. I mean, obviously, he's one of the best mixed martial arts fighters of all time, if not the best. And so for a guy like that to still come in humble, still wanting to learn, still believing in new techniques that we're showing him as a team, I think says a lot about him. And one of the main reasons why he's still really at the tip of the spear is because he comes in with that same kind of student attitude. I think he really likes it. It makes him happy. To learn and to grow and to be pushed mentally, I think is something that he enjoys. So he hasn't changed a bit that way.
What's interesting, though, is when a fighter, you can tell when they've begun to mature, not just for Jones, but anyone, they find the right pieces around them and then they build on that. So he's had you for a while and Mike Winklejohn and Brandon Gibson, but he added Tusa as well as Izzy for the wrestling. Like, what does it say about a fighter's maturation when they find a team and just stick to it? Yes, it means that they get along, but I'm talking about, like, how far along in your development do you need to be before that's something that is not merely available, but a good idea?
Well, I mean, it's an individual thing. Some fighters need that, some fighters don't. But I think with us, we need specialists in every area to keep Jon growing, right? And I can only do so much. And listen, Tusa's jiu-jitsu is way better than mine. Winklejohn's kickboxing and striking is way better than mine. Izzy's wrestling is on a way, way better than mine. So we have to bring in these people that are so much better at everything and not be afraid of that and make sure that we all work together as a cohesive unit. That's super important. So having these specialists around you to push you in the individual aspects, and then having generalists that kind of push you in a framework aspect is super, super important. And one can't really work without the other. So I think it's a very symbiotic relationship to have a lot of specialist coaches that all know MMA. I mean, they're not stupid. They know MMA, but they're really good in their specialized area. Then to bring that in a cohesive whole, and then take that cohesive whole and kind of push it forward with a grand strategy plan is basically, I think, the key to, or one of the keys to Jon's success for sure.
Do you like the quick turnaround?
I do and I don't. There's times for it and there's times for not. Like Cowboy drives me crazy when he wants to fight every 15 minutes. And I'm like, let your body heal. You know what I mean? Like, I just want him to rest a little bit. With Jon, it's yes and no. I think this time he was so motivated after that Gustafsson fight went so well and so perfectly for him that he wanted to do it again. It's been, you have to understand, I mean, with all the out of the cage troubles that he's had, he hasn't been able to fight like everybody else. So I think he's just back in it, just loving it and so excited to do it. He just wants to do it again. I just want to do it again. So I think in that case, it's certainly appropriate, but it's a case by case basis for sure.
From your vantage point as a coach, how do you view his time outside of the cage? And what I mean by that is, the negative part, obviously, is you're not competing, and obviously there is a bit of a scandal attached to it. On the positive side, you're not taking a ton of damage either, so he still has another chapter to add to it. So now that the time off appears to be behind him, how do you assess its impact?
Well, I think it's going to add to his longevity. I think that he's going to be able to go a little bit longer, just because he didn't have any huge wars really in that time frame, like a lot of people, put their body and their brain and even just their motivation through. So I think it's going to be a positive thing on the back end. I think that he's going to be able to go a few more years over the top, where he might not have had been fighting 3 or 4 times a year for the last couple of years.
Let me just ask you a question on the not related to this fight. You have seen MMA before it was MMA, before there was even NHB. And you see it now on ESPN, and it's a wonderful thing. But I'm wondering, from your vantage point, I also feel it's kind of weird that there are there's more weird people in the sport now than ever, which is kind of crazy because there's always been really weird people. From somebody who's seen MMA develop into something and now solidify itself in the firmament of sports, how do you view the state of MMA today?
Well, I think it's a good thing. I mean, listen, we're making money. That's the big difference. And not everybody's making money yet. And I think that down the road, as things change and grow and evolve on the management side and on the promoter side and the company sides, I think that eventually everybody will make more money. But listen, it's mainstream now. I think that's great. There's a lot of really good positive things that have come out of, I mean, when Dana did the Ultimate Fighting show, that was really a game changer. The Ultimate Fighter TV show changed a lot of stuff, really got us mainstream. So there's been a lot of big, I think, blessings to MMA now. There's always been crazy people in MMA. There always will be crazy people in MMA because fighting itself, combat itself, is such a intense process that you get a lot of guys that aren't very mentally stable, but feel that they can keep their demons in their head quiet when they're doing that, when they're doing MMA or doing martial arts or fighting. You get a lot of weird people that are so afraid of combat that they overstudy it, and so you get the spectrum, and I think that'll always be there. And you just get the crazy people that like to fight. Those people always be there. But now there's a lot more professionalism. There's actual athletes with actual plans, with actual career goals in mind. And I think that's a beautiful thing, too. So if anything, I'm very, very grateful to be a part of where MMA is now, as compared to where it was. It was really cool in the Wild West days when you would go and you wouldn't know what the rules, the origin of rules meetings were. You would go to these, states or countries, and you had no idea. Maybe they got something off the internet where you can do elbows here but not there. And so you'd have all these rules meetings and stuff, which we still do, even with unified rules. But the origin of that was that we never knew what was going on. And I think there was a thrill to that and a fun to it. But I like it much better now that it's regulated, that it's taken seriously, that athletes from other sports will come over to our sport and, make that transition. I think that's a great thing.
So let's talk about Anthony Smith. What stands out to me is, in terms of technical application of strategy, Jon's pretty close to the top of the game, if not peerless, but Anthony Smith will take risks, and that can work against him, but it can also work for him. When you assess what the greatest challenge is that Smith poses, what do you think it is?
Well, for me, the dangerous thing about Anthony Smith is he has nothing to lose, so he can really open up and risk stuff. And remember that I've seen some serious upsets. The very first time that I started working with Georges St. Pierre, I'd worked with him a little bit, but his head coach at the time, Victor, let me be in the corner when we lost to Matt Serra, knocked him out. And that was not supposed to happen at all, right? I mean, Matt Serra he won a reality show and da-da-da-da. And it was one of the best Cinderella stories I've ever seen. So, I've been there when the person that was supposed to dominate gets beaten. And that, to me, is the biggest deal, is that fearlessness, that kind of that danger that he presents there. Because I'd actually trained Anthony Smith. I know he's a great fighter. I know he's very capable. So he's a guy he's a sleeper guy. We have to take him very seriously. And if we don't, we can get in big trouble really quickly. So keeping that in mind, that's the biggest challenge for this fight, is that he has nothing to lose. He can really, if he loses, who cares? But he can really open up and throw bombs and do all kinds of craziness. So we have to be ready for that.
Was there any tell ahead of time that something was going to be off when St. Pierre fought Serra, or were you just caught as surprised as everybody else was?
Well, George had obviously been enjoying himself a little bit because, again, you take the guys lightly, right? Like he was supposed to beat Matt. But I hadn't worked with George enough at that point to really know him to say, we better watch out. You know what I mean? I just kind of started working with him at that point. We'd just come into camp, so I didn't see any of the warning signs. And then I'm as guilty of it as anybody. I just have reckless belief in my guys. We'll sort it out. You know what I mean? Okay, we have all these circumstances, but we'll find a way. And I kind of felt like that when he first got hit. I was like, George will suss it out. But man, that was Matt Serra's night. I love Matt so much, and that was his night. He earned that one for sure.
By the way, do you want to see Jon go to heavyweight at some point, or are you neutral about the whole up or down light heavyweight?
I'm neutral. I'll be excited to have. I just like the challenges, right? And I think that Jon needs to challenge himself constantly. So, I'd like to move. I'd like it. If he doesn't want to do it, that's fine. If he does, that's fine. My job is just whoever they put in front of him, I've got to try to figure out the best way to beat him.
Again, let's assume that the USANA issues are behind him. My question for you, again, is as a coach, were you worried the impact it would have on him in terms of, and I mentioned it before, sort of the scandal of it, every website talking about it, every show talking about it, it's all over ESPN, that weight might derail him? What were your concerns when that whole process was going down?
No, not really, because he has, like all great champions, he has the ability to kind of overcome that stuff. It wasn't his first scandal in his young life, right? He's been through the ringer as far as being young and partying and doing all this stuff that young athletes do. So he's been through the ringer with all of that, and he's never really affected him. And people they have that kind of thread where there can be a lot of drama outside the cage. I always think of the best at dealing with that was, obviously Muhammad Ali, right? I mean, he might be going to jail, and he has all these war things going on, and there's always all this drama with everybody around him. Everybody hates him because he was a black Muslim at the time, and none of that ever derailed him. I think the real champions can take all that stuff in stride and be just, that's just the game. They're okay with it. So I'm never worried about any of that stuff derailing him, because he showed throughout his career that he's able to overcome that kind of stuff.
Hey, let me ask you this. One thing I love about the fight game is learning where people come from. And I don't mean just their families, but I mean the territories they come from. You have represented New Mexico harder than almost anyone else, not in an outward kind of showy way, but just sort of by being who you are. There's this thing you've launched, the New Mexico Experience. Now, what is this? You're trying to get people to come not merely to Jackson's or even a part of that, but to the state more generally. What is this?
Yeah, so thanks for bringing that up, boss. I am a very proud New Mexican, so I am trying to share all of the cool. We get a really bad rap here. We're very high on a lot of bad lists, I'll put it that way, violence and poverty and that kind of thing. So I have access to a lot of media and celebrities and different people, and so I'm just trying to spread the good word of our state. We've got every time I go to an event now, I take 3 businesses, one from northern New Mexico, central New Mexico, and then from southern New Mexico, and I just try to tell everybody I know about them how great they are. We've got these guys, and we have so many cool things about New Mexico. Let me say that. It's such a beautiful place. It's such amazing people. And so I want to help the businesses out. I want to do something tangible. I work a lot better if I have a cause, something to dig my teeth into to help other people. And so that's kind of my thing. I'm not getting paid for it or anything. It's all volunteer. And this time we have Cervantes Food, which does this amazing chili. We got Barata Golf that does you can put the tees and the golf tees in your hat, which I think is really cool. And then we got these amazing Taos energy bars, which I've been eating like crazy. They're so good. So that's this time. And then, of course, the New Mexico Lobos, which is our local sports college sports team. So, I push it a lot. I'm really excited about representing New Mexico and really excited about just getting the word out of a place that, last time I flew from New York, I was informed that I would need a passport to fly to New Mexico because. So once I informed them we're actually a state, we're right next to Texas and next to Arizona, you're like, are you sure? I was like, yes, sir, I'm very sure. I'm an American citizen. I was raised there. So just that kind of thing where, we want to be known for more than just Breaking Bad.
Let me ask you this, are you thankful or resentful of Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul?
I'm both. I'm not resentful. That's a strong word. Listen, there's been a boom to our economy. We need all the money we can get right now. Our economy is not great, so that has been great. It's also been, it's been good to be at least recognized as something, maybe in the United States. The downside, obviously, is that everybody asks, is there really meth everywhere? Because it does have kind of a negative portrayal of our state when that's the only portrayal available. Not like Texas, where you can, there's 18 different versions of Texas. So I'd say that I'm more grateful than anything, just because of the economy and it's positive impact on the job and stuff, and the positive impact on the economy. But it would be nice if we had a cool show, I don't know, about flamenco dancing or the art culture here or anything else. That would be cool. Probably not as entertaining though.
Before I let you go, one quick thing. I did a little digging and I found out that you had trained Steve Irwin, whose Google Doodle had done when you go to google.com, they do the artistic rendering, and they had done one to commemorate not Steve's death, but it was the anniversary of it, and they wanted to do some. It was his birthday, but of course he has passed.
Yep.
In any event, PETA had gone out of their way to say something pretty negative about him. Now, here's the thing. I don't know how you feel, Greg. It's a longer debate. I am utterly against the horrors of factory farming. I'm against ag-gag laws. It's bad for the environment. It's bad for the economy. It's bad for everyone. But I did feel like they really stepped over the line with that one. You knew Steve. What did you make of him as a person and PETA going after him?
Did PETA go after Steve? Really? That's funny.
Yeah, they said that they didn't like hammer him, but they kind of said that the way in which he interacted with animals was, let's call it light abuse.
Right. Okay. So there's several things with that. And one is, in a perfect world, I'm sure that things would be more perfect. Human beings don't care about what they don't touch, feel, or interact with. And the old shows of here's the majestic moose from far away, isn't doing anybody favors. And at the end of the day, we need laws. We need to protect these animals. We need people to care. So PETA people already care. They're preaching to the choir. You know what I mean? Like, okay, that's great. Like, yeah, absolutely, we should treat animals well and with respect. But that's like, Bob Dylan going and singing about peace to a bunch of hippies. Like, yeah, okay, great. That's cool. However, we need to change the minds of the people that might not feel that way. So that's what Steve did well. Steve would pull you in. People that wouldn't care about animals at all of a sudden were fascinated by this guy that was risking his life and limb on their behalf. So you've got a guy that's saying, listen, look at how beautiful these animals are, but don't look at them from a distance. That's not going to talk anybody into anything. Like, again, in a beautiful, perfect world, everybody would love it, but that's just not the way it works. So if you actually want to make conservation work, you have to make people care. If you got to make people care, you got to shock them out of their seats. And Steve did exactly that. So it's ridiculous. And that's what always happens with these movements. Instead of saying, thank you, Steve, for your contribution. Thank you, Steve, for helping out in all of the humanitarian work he did for, well, I guess really in humanitarian, whatever it is, helping animals out from one side of this planet to the other. So saying thank you for the fight. They have to nitpick and be upset. And that's what always happens, right? That's why with these intergroups, no one can get along. Like that old Monty Python and I think it was The Life of Brian, right? None of the revolutionary groups could get along. They all fought it themselves as much as they fought everybody else. So just seeing that is always a negative thing for me, because why are you going to go after one of your own? Because he didn't do it the exact way that you would have done it. And I know I'm going to get hammered by PETA people. Well, yeah, but you know what? Like, we're all in for saving animals. Even hunters do a great job in helping that economy. And if you can't see that there are people with another point of view that might not be your own, but you have a common goal, then for me, it's just noise. You live in a cartoon where, maybe we can work there where everybody gets to where they love animals, and that's not needed. But until then, yeah, it's kind of needed. And I'm sure to all you PETA people that are going to hammer me with comments and stuff, yes, I get it. But in my opinion, this is the real world. Steve was a warrior. I knew him. I had a heart of gold. He was one of the best people I've ever met in my entire life. And he really, really did care about the animals. And I think he was right in trying to make humans care. When you go to a zoo, they walk around with the animals. You can touch them. You can pet them. You get to know them. And then when you go home, you say, you know what? I really like that animal. Maybe you hear about a law that's going to protect hippos or whatever else it is. Then I'm all for that.
You know what, Greg? Can't add much to that. I wish you nothing, but you don't need it. But good luck. No, it's good. I agree with all of it. And, obviously you got a big challenge, and so does John at UFC 235. Thank you so much for your time and your insight. Can't wait to see what you guys have in store on Saturday.
Thanks, brother. Appreciate it.